Hey folks, Mr. Michelson here. As you know, your language arts teacher is not here today, so we've recorded this just to sort of get you ready for what we're doing. Now that we've had a chance to do some independent reading, we're going to turn right back to our essays, those Rings of Culture essays. Now, I know a lot of people have everything outlined, some people have their body typed up, and we've only really focused on the body of the essay, kind of the meat of the sandwich for this essay. But as we saw last class, there was that example essay that we took a look at that had an introduction paragraph, two body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You're only likely going to have one body paragraph unless you decide to do more, but we want to work on today what the introduction is going to look like. And so I'm on Google Classroom right now. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a place that you could do your introduction outline. If you want to do this digitally on Google Doc here, there's the Google Doc that you could use. You don't have to do it that way. Otherwise, you'll use this green sheet, get a piece of paper, and do it that way, the old-fashioned way. So whether you have a green sheet or you want to do it on here, this is what we're going to be working on in class today. A couple other things that I put on Google Classroom are how to outline your conclusion. We'll talk more about that later, but you can certainly preview it if you'd like. And there's also a couple other resources I posted here. Copy of transitions, which is something we'll talk about more later on as well. And today we're going to talk about this document here, copy of attention getters. I want to talk about what an attention getter is and how you can go about using it in your introduction. Because if you look at this outline for the introduction, maybe it's on the green sheet that you're looking at it on, it says we want to put an attention getter as the first thing in our introduction. So let's go through what those are. Let's talk about attention getters. Let me backtrack here. When you start an essay, you want to have something that grabs your readers, something that gets their attention, something that gets them into the paper and gets them at least sort of understanding what you're going to be writing about, even in the first few sentences. So the first way that people like to do that, the first suggestion that we have for maybe thinking about an attention getter for your own essay, is this one, opening with an unusual detail. You might want to think about the culture that you're writing about. Is there something unusual that you could add in there just to kind of catch your reader off guard, just to get them into the topic of culture? The example here that they give is Manitoba, because of its cold climate, is not thought of as a great place to be a reptile. Actually, it has the largest seasonal congregation of garter snakes in the world. Now, that's an unusual detail. I'm sure this person wasn't writing about their rings of culture. They were probably writing about snakes or maybe about Manitoba or something else. But I'm interested. I'm intrigued. This is weird, and I want to kind of read on. That's what your attention getter should do. It should get people to want to read on in your essay. So that's the first one. Number two, as you can see here, says open with a definition. This is a pretty typical way that I see a lot of students include an attention getter in their introduction, where they maybe find a definition of whatever they're talking about. According to Merriam-Webster, war is a state of usually open and declared armed hostile conflict between states or nations. Maybe they went on to write about a war or a particular war or something that had to do with war. Of course, you're dealing with culture, so maybe there's a definition of culture that you would want to include for your attention getter. But again, I've seen that before. It's not usually the most creative way to begin your paper. The third one is kind of creative, I think. You could open with a quotation. Here's an example of a quotation. It says, Albert Hubbard, an American writer, artist, and philosopher, once said, "Truth is stronger than fiction." Pretty good quote. I'm sure this person maybe researched who Alfred Hubbard was and maybe knows why he would be a good person to include in their beginning of their essay for the attention getter. And so you could think about that. Maybe there's a quotation you could use from someone who's well known, from someone you know. Be sure to include the name of the person who said whatever quote you're using, and also maybe why they would be a good person to quote for your particular essay. Why should the reader listen to this person? Why is this person an expert? Why are you including this person at the beginning of your essay for an attention getter? So you might deal with that in a couple sentences. Number 4 says open with an anecdote. Anecdote. Really, an anecdote is just a really short story, a brief story that could be maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sentences. It wouldn't take up a lot of space, but it could provide an amusing and attention-getting opening if it's short and to the point. So you might think, with your own culture and the culture that you're writing about, the ring of culture you're writing about, what kind of maybe little story from your life could you include to just get your essay going, to get people into your topic? That would be what an anecdote is. And that might be a good one to use. Number 5 says open with a fact or a statistic. I'm not sure this is going to be the best one for the essay that you're writing right now, but maybe it is. Sometimes a statistic or a fact will add emphasis or interest to your topic. You should include the author's or the item's authoritative source. So make sure that you're bringing it to your essay and making sure that it is there for a reason. Why is that fact there? Why did you put it? Make sure you include it, kind of the why. Why is that fact or statistic there? Number 6 says open with a question. How many books would people read if it were not for television? Might be a good question to ask if you were writing about television, or if you're writing perhaps about books. Think about an interesting question. Don't just make it lame like, what is culture? Or have you ever thought about culture? I think you can probably think of a better question than that. So give it some thought. Questions should be interesting if you're going to use them for your attention getter. Number 7, open with an exaggeration or an outrageous statement. Here's an example. The whole world watched as the comet flew overhead. Now, I'm not sure exactly what you might put for this one on your essay about culture, but it's some food for thought. Maybe it's an option for you if you can think of something that would be appropriate for this essay, an exaggeration or an outrageous statement. So those are your types of attention getters. And today, you're going to start with that on your outline. After you've done your attention getter, really what you want to do is explain your attention getter. How does it relate to your paper and to culture? I kind of mentioned that as I was going through some of these options. Also, in your introduction, I'd like you to try to define culture in your own words. What does culture mean to you? Now that we've studied it, you should have a pretty good idea of what that is. So get that down in your outline so that we can eventually see it in your essay, in your introduction. And then the topic sentence, you've likely already written this. It's probably already on your other outline that you've done, where this is the topic sentence you've already written ends your introduction so that we know what your essay is going to be about before you get into it in the next paragraph. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I just wanted to kind of get you started on this and give you some ideas for how to write your introduction. For today, we'll be completing that introduction outline. You can choose to do that on the green sheet or do that on the document from Google Classroom. If you've completed that, type up your introductory paragraph above your body paragraph on that same document, and we're just moving a little further along. Next, we'll talk about conclusions, and we'll talk about some other things to consider for a final draft. That's today. Get to work. Thank you very much.